where are the priorities coming from, right? Like, where is it coming from? Is it coming from a sense of what I think I need? Or is it coming from a sense of what my family needs? Like, you can adjust things then to what the whole needs, highest good of all. But
Yeah.
start with highest good of self so that you understand, especially if you're a giver or an externally focused person.
Victoria, it's so great to have you here today on the show. I'm so honored that you're
Yay.
here and we get to catch up, and it's great
Hmm.
to see your face.
I know, it's so nice to see your face. It's been a really long time. Besides the random texts, right?
The random texts and the random
Yeah.
encounters, but yeah, just to see your face and your smile. So I'm so grateful you're here today to share with us more about what you
Yeah.
do and more about Reiki and all that fantastic stuff. You definitely were part of my beginning journey not that long ago, but it seems like a long time ago. But before we get
Yeah.
into that, would you mind just sharing with us like who you are, what you do, your mission right now?
Yeah, yeah. As best I can, right? In the winter fog. Yeah, I'm Victoria Squazzo. I am if we're talking by trade, I'm a Reiki Master teacher, an Emotion Code Practitioner. I also do a lot of movement. So I'm a yoga teacher, personal trainer. And I run a practice called Align with Victoria, which focuses on intuitive energy work, really like a bespoke practice, which really focuses on inviting people into their truth, using energy work to move away from the external world temporarily so that you can really balance from the inside out and meet yourself again. I was profoundly changed by Reiki first, and then just energy healing in general. And so that's what I try to do with private practice. I also teach a lot of certification classes, both in person and virtual. And I have a program called Sparking Joy, which I'm just I launched a little bit last year, but I'm working through, which is allowing people to connect to their own joy uh, outside of others and external identities. So yeah, that's kind of what I'm doing right now. Lisa and I met many moons ago in New Jersey, and we really connected kind of right away.
Mhm.
And you were actually one of the first two people I ever certified.
Oh,
So that
really?
was
I
my
didn't know that.
first Reiki 1 certification back many moons ago. Was it 2017, 2018,
I-
something right there.
Yeah, 2017, 2018 for sure, around there.
Yeah, it was the first, and I was like, "Okay, it's time." And you and there was Deb, the two of you really were just even the right people. I felt like the three of us kind of came together, and it was just the right time for all of us to be in that experience. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, and it I really feel the same way, like reflecting back, that it just like aligned and happened when it was supposed to happen. And it was uncomfortable for me because it was like I was so curious about energy work, but then I was also still like so, of course, tied to my identity, and that this is not totally something
Mhm.
I hate to say I should be doing, but that's like kind of there was a part of me that felt that way of like I got to go do the regular work and make the money and take care of the family, but there was this part of me that was calling to really start exploring
Yeah.
more of
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
the energy, the healing.
Yeah. I mean, don't you think we all I'm just gonna turn my view off. I'm tired of looking at myself. On Zoom as we all do. I'm like, "Oh, there's my face." I it's true, right? We just are like, "I'd rather
Yeah.
just focus on you," right? I think that we all struggle with that. I still, right, struggle with what I think too, especially like my generation. I'm a Gen Xer, and I'm definitely straddling so many worlds. And I do think there are these identities that I get stuck in that even now I have to be so mindful about not attaching to and not out of fear or out of what I think is necessity or lack of trust, like stay in. Well, I have to do this. I have to do this. But you just
Hmm.
said it so beautifully where you're like, I had to lean into my curiosity and look at where
Hmm.
it's taken you.
Yeah, it's been a really interesting road, Victoria, for sure.
For real. For real.
And it is like what was calling to me for sure. And I loved how you described though what you do of like you're creating, you had said something so beautifully of like creating a space where people can spend time getting quiet or something like that. I almost can you even restate that, what you said?
Probably not. It's really super off the cuff. Welcome to like the artist creative in me, right? I think what it is I feel really convicted about the fact that we are so hypersensitive, or we've been trained to be so sensitive to the intuitions of our environment and our world, but never to ourself. And when you go into doing something like energy work, the only place you can be is in your truth, quiet and centered. And if you're available to listen to that over time and spending more time being balanced, you get to kind of let your internal truth, your soul, your energies really be how you look then at the external world, how you move through your life. It's like your rhythm first.
Mm,
And so I think the only way to do that is to do a receptive practice like energy work, which is, I think, very hard for everyone. It's still even hard for me. Where like all you can do with Reiki is Reiki and emotion code. I mean, any energy modality is oftentimes you just have to go, okay, let me just be and let me see and let me observe and let me feel and let me sense.
mhm.
Because we need to start learning our own language.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like instead
Yes, I
of
do.
we're taught to understand if you're in corporate world, a corporate language and the language of communicating with loved ones and then with acquaintances and business people but it's like we've never heard our own language and it speaks to us in
Yeah.
different ways. And I am just so convicted that that is where we have to be. That is where we should return to without feeling bad about it. We should just be like, oh, yeah, I'm just going to filter this through my own energy, my own lens, my own experience. And I entirely credit energy work with inspiring that conviction in me.
Yeah. Yeah, that so resonates. I love how you said that it's learning your own language because it's like learning that, one of I think it's just an easy thing to relate is like the diet, that the diet you've been taught isn't necessarily the diet for you. You have to learn what your body needs and what your body's really asking for that's going to best nourish it. Diet is like not a one size fit all, and that's the same thing with the language inside is we've been conditioned that it's a one size fits all, kind of the same even with education, that you're supposed
Oh
to
my
go to
gosh. Don't even
school
get me started, right? Yeah.
and
Yeah.
everybody's going to learn the same way and everybody's going to,
Hmm. Hmm.
go to high school, go to college, and that's just not how it is. More and more people are realizing that and
Yeah.
changing that perception a little bit of like, oh wait, my what I need is different. What I need. So with that tied in, tell us, for those that don't know, what is Reiki? How can you summarize that?
Sure. Reiki's an energy healing modality. So the way actually my mentor taught me, and I think it's the greatest way to sort of dive in, is Reiki is acupuncture without needles. Right? Chiropractic without manipulation. So essentially, we're working in the energy pathways in the body, and there are thousands. And so essentially, Reiki channels in universal energy that exists in and all around us. For those science minded people, it's very scientifically proven that everything is energy, frequencies are all around us. The people who do Reiki are attuned to channel energy into their bodies and out their hands to uh, shift, maneuver, cleanse, and just rebalance those pathways. And usually we focus on the main energy centers of the body. So, like when I say it's acupuncture, you're putting needles in certain places to increase energy flow, to rebalance certain areas. And that's essentially what this does. And I find that what it does is it goes beyond the physical body and it really gets into that energetic, oftentimes spiritual layer of the body to balance and harmonize where so many stressors, tensions, um,
Past
negative
lives.
thought patterns, past lives. I mean, linear lives. I mean, we could talk all through that, but like where all aspects of our energy can kind of be on some level called back into us and reset so that you are balanced. And so to me, that's what Reiki does. It's non touch in general. So that's why Reiki can also be done virtually or so at a distance. And
Hmm.
honestly, most of my practice is virtual anyway now. So
Hmm.
COVID did that.
Yeah. If you weren't gonna say it, I was. I was like, "Yep, COVID changed a lot," right? We all became
Yep.
masters of Zoom and so much more.
Oh my gosh, right. Yeah, so that's sort of a hashtag about Reiki, right? I mean, there are probably many definitions, but that's sort of how I relate to it.
And, that makes a lot of sense. I love that simple, definition of, like, acupuncture just without the needles, like, without the
Mm.
touch and so forth. Um, and there's so many different parts of Reiki or so many different, layers of Reiki in the sense of as in and there's just lots of different kinds of Reiki, right, that have been developed and all that kinda stuff.
Well, just when you say that, I think the important thing to remember is that while formalized Reiki has only been around for maybe like 100 or so years, energy healing has been around forever. And
Mhm.
just like most practices that have an ancient history, it's all lineage based. And so when you go to get trained or you go to see a practitioner, you are participating in the history of their lineage. You are receiving what they have learned from their mentor or master, who's learned from their master, who's learned from their master. And
Mm.
so there will be slight differences. To me, because I'm a singer also, so it's the same thing as finding a singing teacher. You find the kind of healer or practitioner that aligns with you, that you resonate with, that makes sense to you. And they probably, while the origins are the same, they may have a perspective or a shift or a way they do things that really harmonizes with your journey.
Yeah, that's so beautiful. I really haven't heard anybody quite explain it like that. So that I love that, and I think that, and definitely for people that are listening that are newer to energy work or newer to some of this, that really, really helps that. And then you mentioned emotion code too. So just, how does that tie in? What have you found with
Oh
that?
my gosh. At first, I was trying so hard to make them tie, and then of course the universe knows better, right? And they're like, just let everything work out. So here's what's great about emotion code, and then I'll explain what emotion code is. Emotion code's an energy healing modality. And so if I have Reiki, which is an energy healing modality, and emotion code, which is an energy healing modality, they're going to somehow harmonize because they're coming from the same place with the purpose of supporting a healthy, balanced, vibrant energy body, right? That's what Reiki does. That's what emotion code does. Healing, touch, any acupuncture. So, emotion code, I've been certified there just going on 4 years now. And essentially, it uses the principle of clearing out specific stressors and traumas. It's kind of like where we have PTSD about things. So, say you and I had a big fight
Mhm,
and you felt angry, resentful, you dreaded the continuing of the conversation. So say you have those three emotional energies that really impacted you during our argument. You probably are only going to process, say, the anger. And so the resentment and the dread are going to get stored in your energy. They're like a blocked energy pattern. So it could
mhm,
be the next time we talk, while you process the anger, you didn't process the other two, and you sort of walked into our conversation almost feeling that again. And so instead of coming into a conversation or into your life on a two, you're coming in on a six
mhm,
connected. So what I do with emotion code is we can go to specific stressors or we can go to most impactful emotional energies. This is from childhood, from past lives, inherited, just like DNA. I mean, we could talk about emotion code for hours, but what it does is it pulls out very specific situations that I think can help bring a specificity to your energy healing practice. And where I
mhm.
find they blend super well is when I'm balancing the energy, I'm always, if I go into chakras or energy pathways, I'm always asking, is there some specific emotional pattern or is there some specific stressor or trauma that is really blocking? It's sort of like calling to the energy in a different way, right? So instead of just being here and just letting it go, oftentimes I think the person receiving Reiki for their learning sometimes needs to understand where some of these blocks are coming from.
Right.
And so it's like, wow, there's a lot of resentment in your heart. And this is a recent resentment. Oh my gosh, I'm super resentful about this fight that I had with Victoria. And once we clear it, and you start to process it from the subconscious mind to the conscious mind and it flushes out, it just becomes a memory as opposed to a stressor that you keep being re-stressed about.
Right, that makes total sense. It's like, you may know, you may not know, but most of the time, like something's off or you feel stuck with stuff and whatever, you're just not maybe totally sure or aware what it is. You're using the example of a fight that just happened, but it can be other stuff
Well,
from.
I mean, think about relationships we have with our family members.
Yeah.
These patterns of all these years of maybe arguments we had. So every time you see that person, you go to a family Christmas, it's like all the stuff that's happened, or with your job. You feel like, why do I keep choosing the same job? Because that energy is, you're filled with the energy of low self worth or low self esteem or feeling powerless or like a failure. So, are you always choosing in alignment with that energy? And so, Reiki is doing so much to clear those foundations. Yet, if we understand also from an emotion code perspective where those specific emotional challenges came from, we kind of keep calling up all of the layers underneath until we've cleared that challenge. And then you really have an understanding. So you're more sensitive to noticing when you've made similar choices. And so you're like, oh, I see why I'm doing that. And you can maybe make a new one.
Yeah. Yeah, that's helpful.
Yeah,
You
super
don't wanna be
helpful.
on the hamster wheel, right? And doing the same
No.
patterns over and over again.
Hmm.
Um, I did wanna ask you a little bit about what brought you to this journey and what brought you to Reiki, and,
Yeah.
yeah, the journey there is always just as important and inspirational as
Yeah.
the work
Yeah.
itself.
Yeah. It's funny. This is hilarious because when I was putting up my new website a few years ago, I wrote a bio, very typical, like Victoria does this and blah, 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 blah. And my business coach was like, why don't you just tell people why you came to energy work? And once I started writing it, I was like, yeah, because when I thought about it, a lot of the people that come see me have not similar stories, but I feel like connection based on why I came. So
Mhm.
I was living in New York. Is going back almost 15 years ago, and there were certain aspects of my life that were great. I was in cabaret, so I was singing regularly. I had a job that I enjoyed. Maybe wasn't the perfect fit, but allowed for the things that I wanted to do. I had great friends, but I was in an unbelievably toxic relationship. Welcome
Mm.
to why a lot of people will try something. And I didn't realize how desperate I was for things to change. Um, I was aware, but didn't focus on the fact that I had really low self-esteem and low self-worth, that I absolutely think caused that attraction to being willing to be in a toxic relationship that didn't serve me. And I was meeting up with a friend like every couple of weeks for lunch, and I started to notice this change in her. And she just was glowing from the inside out and was not pregnant. So I was like, all right, I
What's going
have to
on?
ask, right, what's happening? And she's like, oh, I've been doing Reiki twice a month. And I was like, I don't know what that is. And while I had a reasonably open family, like we practiced holistic health and vitamins and stuff like that. mm, And my mom believed in past lives, but on some level, I thought because she was open, but thought it was cool and exciting as opposed to she really believed it, right?
Okay.
So I was like, well, tell me about it. I'm cynical, but I'm open. And she just started telling me about it. And she had already got certified and she felt really good. And it stuck with me. And I remember I had started seeing like a nutritional response tester for supplements. And I had heard there was a Reiki practitioner there who actually ended up being my friend's Reiki practitioner. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to go. And so I remember standing outside that night and I could tell something was up where I was at a point of, I came here because I'm desperate, because I know something needs to change. Because while there are aspects of my life that feel so good, I say this in my website, I am separate from my own joy. And I was
Mm.
so, without being aware, I recognized that I was so unwilling to keep staying there. And I was like, I don't even know, I think, fully what my own joy feels like. And to own it and to feel good that it's only what I think it's supposed to be like and not dependent on others, even though I love being in community, right? So I go up there And I lay down and I'm a cynical but desperate, right? So you're like, well, desperation wins. And I lay down and she's like, everybody's experience is different. And closed my eyes. And I cannot even express to you that my entire world changed within the blink. And that is not the experience for everybody. But I think it had sort of been waiting for me like, oh, here you
Sounds
are.
like it. Yeah.
Here's this meeting of life. And the second she put her hands over me, my world exploded with color. I saw things and it was like my third eye just unlocked and I saw visions and I had very clear pictures of things that I didn't understand. And it was this vibrant world that I think had me realize that I had been seeing closer to black and gray for a lot of my life because I
Mm.
was so filled with low self-worth and did I deserve and what everybody told me I was or should be. And when I got into my internal world that had been waiting for me to meet it, it was like, and so I decided, great, I'm going to do this. So I would go probably every few weeks. Great. Only wanted to receive. I was like, I don't want to do anything else. I had never really received before. I was like, this is great. This is great. And then like a year and a half later, I'm talking and she's like, oh, I'm doing a Reiki 1 certification. And in my mind, I'm like, nope, don't want to do that. And then out of my mouth was like, oh, good, because I really want to get certified. And I was like,
What?
and that was the first time my intuition, thank goodness, spoke for me and got me out of my own head.
Mhm.
And now, 13, 14 years later, we're here.
Right.
Didn't look back.
It was, like, really calling to you and showed you where you needed to go. Like, you had no idea walking in that day that you were gonna have an experience like that.
I just needed someone to help me.
Mhm.
I needed to stop pretending like I was okay and beating myself up for not fixing things. Or, on the other hand, constantly focusing on fixing myself because I thought I needed to be fixed. I needed someone to help me, which is kind of why I got there. And I was like, I need something else because all the ways that I've been doing things. I got super fit the year before. I felt great in my body. I felt like I had sovereignty over my well being physically, but I didn't have sovereignty over my emotional being because I didn't have sovereignty over my spiritual self or a sovereign connection over my energy. I didn't have any
Mhm.
of that.
Yeah. Wow, that's super interesting because I feel what you're sharing, and then also it was like our journeys aren't the same, but before I started really waking up, I also got in shape. I was like seeing a connection there. I'm like, that's so ironic. I was like, I was really in shape,
Hmm.
exercising a lot.
Hmm.
And then I remember meeting with you one time and had you had done Reiki on me and you were like, you're so in your head. Like your head is like so loud. Or something like that you had said. It was to
Right.
that nature. And I'm like, what are you
Hmm.
talking about? Like I didn't want to hear it yet, but it was what I
Right.
needed to hear.
Hmm.
And
Yeah.
so I love what you were saying in there too about just your separation from joy. Like how did you even realize that? Or what is it that made you realize that?
Oh, I will tell you right now, until I wrote that bio in my website, I didn't realize that's what it was. I could feel and sense that there was some separateness from, I probably called it happiness then, or being able to choose healthy relationships or not feeling powerless in my
Mhm.
own life to a certain extent. I felt like life was living me a little bit. And like you, where I felt like I took some of that power back, power was my word then, was through getting fit because I felt like I could do whatever I wanted and I felt my body expand into its potential. And I think as far as separate from my own joy, I don't think I understood that until I started to realize that if I looked at my life the way I was living it, I was not prioritizing my own joy.
Mhm.
Like, I think life looks like our priorities, whether we want to admit it or not, or whether we're like, heck yeah,
Amen. Amen.
right? Our priorities we could say could be, "Oh, I'm pursuing my own joy." But what it looks like is we have to get our safety done first, and then if there's time, we're in joy. And that's not a judgment, it's just listen, your life looks like it. And what my life looked like was taking what I could get and not um being so worried about what the external world was going to say or beat me down that I just stayed smaller
Mm.
and would get bigger only in my little corners I already felt really comfortable with instead of letting myself float through the world really honestly. And so over time, over this journey, and I'm still working on it. I mean, of course, I feel like on some level, this is it's a marathon, not a sprint, kids. Right? And
Yeah.
I worked so much on my own journey that I found bits and pieces of going, well, you know the things that bring you joy. So why are you not doing them? Now,
Oh, that's
sometimes it's
such a good
because,
question.
right? Some of it's because some of us are so stressed out that our nervous systems are just so shot because we've been operating in fight or flight for so long. And that's been my experience a little bit. Went through a pretty stressful time right before COVID when I lost my father and had some changes and again, I'm all in a good place with it, but I also needed to just like zone out for a while and like tune out, which was okay. um, but once I got my energy back, I was like, why am I not pursuing my own joy? Why is it still the last thing off my list? Which made me realize that I was super attached still to my external identities, which when we talk about joy is why I started to create my like sparking joy thing, because I recognized that I may have sparked my joy, but I really let the flame turn out. And when I stepped into a room, instead of being so connected to who I am and what I want to share about me as a being, I was sharing who I was in the world.
Mhm. Mhm.
And that reminded me that I was again trying to check off the list of let me get all the things like the world things done. And then when I have time, I'll settle down and there'll be more time and I'll connect to myself and and I wasn't doing it.
Yeah.
So my priority was everything else first.
If for anybody listening right now or watching this, it's like that is such great feedback of you your priorities, like you shared, are really showing you what your world is like. And that is just such a deep message. Like you can take it here or you can take it way deep, but that is what wakes people up. That is like if you really sit with that and like,
Yep.
are my
Yeah.
priorities actually in alignment with what I'm taking action on or what my world looks like
Hmm.
or
Hmm.
what it is on a daily basis? That will I say that because it did the same thing for me, like you're saying. Like
Hmm.
it was a deep realization that my priorities were not in alignment whatsoever with, what I was saying my priorities are versus what I was actually
Yeah.
doing.
But what I'll say about that really quickly is that, like, one, we can't have judgment about it
Yeah.
because we are trying to recenter ourselves when many of us have spent many of our lives like out of our own center, right? Out of our own space. So again, as we learn that language that I spoke about earlier, like this is part of that process, but also on the fact that our priorities get to shift, right? And
Hmm.
our priorities get to change. And also where are the priorities coming from, right? Like where is it coming from? Is it coming from a sense of what I think I need,
Hmm.
right? Or is it coming from a sense of what my family needs? Like you can adjust things then to what the whole needs, highest good of all. But
Yeah.
start with highest good of self so that you understand, especially if you're a giver or an externally focused person. So those of us that are in the healing space or teaching, we tend to be externally focused. So without being aware of it, we're going to look at what other people need and it's going to somehow be part of what we think
That,
about when we create our priorities.
yeah.
And that's been my hardest journey. Yeah. And I will
Yeah.
say, like, it's led me to the hard truth of like, I got to let go of my story. Like, I don't know if you can say this word, but I'm saying I got bitch slapped about that this year. Sorry about that, but
That's okay.
I did. I got really hard slapped about it
A nice
because,
spiritual lesson slap in the face.
yeah, I got a spiritual slap in the face. For you say you're moving towards your own joy, but you still have a story that you're a victim, or you're a this, or you're a that, or you can't. Your priorities aren't able to yet be truly in alignment with what you want, or you have to do this first.
Oh, yeah. That is such a big one. You have to do this first before you can do that. Like, where did that come from?
I know, right? Order of operations, or you have to struggle always to get the thing. It always has to be walking uphill in the rain for it to really be worth it.
Yes.
Why? Who says?
Yes. That's really crazy that you're sharing those because those have all been on my mind lately. And like,
Really?
yeah, and like untangling those even more and more of like, is
Mm.
this true? It is not true. There's no reason to still be attached to this. Um, with that too, going back to what you were sharing a little bit earlier of like the
Yeah.
self-worth factor
Hmm.
and how you saw
Mm.
that tied to the relationship,
Yeah.
like what did you learn from that? Like how would you even share or describe
Mhm.
that level of self-worth and how did you come out from that?
That's interesting. So it's really funny because I just did some energy work with a healer to really let go of my self-worth, because even all these years later, it is still, it has still been holding me back. And I've been so ready to release it that that has become my priority.
Mhm.
But what happened is the more I did Reiki, and also the more I worked with someone who was willing to tell me the truth, which is why I knew I aligned with the right practitioner. Because listen, I'm a Jersey girl. May live in North Carolina right now, but I'm a straight shooter. I'm a Jersey interrupter. I'm
Like
like,
no filter.
yeah, I don't.
Lesser
I mean,
filter.
I'm very, look, it all comes from kindness and love, but I'm also going to tell you the truth. And it's not my truth or my opinion. When we're in an energy work session, it is entirely what I hear your energy saying, or what I hear universe, divine source, whatever you're going to call it, say.
Hmm.
So I'm going to tell you the truth. And I had a practitioner who was telling me the truth. And they're like, "Okay, no judgment about this person being super toxic." And like, you're like, "What are the priorities for you in a relationship?" And I think one of the first things I listed was, well, it has to, it's someone I trust. And then it was someone I have a connection with, who thinks more deeply about the world, someone who's kind to people and animals. Blah, 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 blah. And she's like, "Okay, let's just stop there for now." And she's like, "Let's ask these questions. Can you trust this person?" And I'm like, "No." And I knew I couldn't trust this person, but I needed someone to say it out loud. And so that was initially what moved me away. Also, I could tell I was so unhappy and spent so much time thinking about how to make something work that
Uh,
wasn't working,
uh-huh.
that at some point, like, it just was like, this is ridiculous. So I almost had no choice but to move out of it. And then it helped me see the pattern of, I often spent time in relationships with partners I couldn't trust on one level or another. I don't want that to be the obvious answer,
Right.
because that's not necessarily the truth. You can not trust them with your time, with your emotions, because they're not emotionally available. And I knew that at the end of the day, I was choosing partners who are emotionally unavailable, because I was emotionally unavailable. Because, of course, let's dial back to I had a father who was emotionally unavailable, right? I don't want to go down that path, but my point is, it
You're
led
connecting
me
the
to,
dots though. That's what
right.
you're sharing. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm connecting the dots, that I had a trigger with emotional unavailability, and I kept choosing it because I was emotionally unavailable, because there was a part of me that either didn't deserve it. So there's my low deserve, I don't deserve, and my self worth going, I have to adjust, fit myself into the person I'm dating's world, or into anyone's world. I was always
Mm,
such a great employee because I fit myself in,
mm,
right? So that's my work life, where I would be strong in my personality and tell the truth, but I would always try to fit myself in because I wanted the connection, because connection is so profound and powerful to me. And it is a priority, right?
Right.
Connection, purpose, and passion, those are my priorities, right? But I was doing it in a way that was coming from low self-worth, and I was like, this feels awful. And when I started doing Reiki and I kept feeling myself balanced, so I'd leave a Reiki session balanced and I'd walk into the world, it was so much more uncomfortable to maintain relationships, jobs, conversations that were so either toxic or lower vibration. Like I think we all probably can relate to as we get healthier, more spiritual, even physically. You eat junky food when you are just eating super cleanly. Wow, you can really feel the difference in your body, right? So, of
Yes.
course, it would make sense that if you are then getting back into a toxic relationship, when you've been doing all this energy cleansing and soul cleansing and
Mhm.
starting to build your self worth and understand what feels truly right to you, and your tolerance for things that don't align with you gets lower, and so that's what started to move me in a better direction, right?
Yeah. Yeah, that was, I think for anybody listening that was, like, really listening to that or watching this is, like, you're taking us through your story, and it's like we're seeing in our life where it relates to us and, like, how we could choose differently, how we could do differently, or connecting the dots from the relationship to I love what you
Mhm.
said because it was like the the partner is emotionally unavailable, but you realized yourself that you were emotionally unavailable. And it's like what we judge in others is showing us ourselves. It's just really hard to see at times and really challenging to face that.
Well, because I think it gets overwhelming because because we're like, okay, so what do I do with that? Force myself? And it's that balance where everyone's like, you just have to step out of your comfort zone. It's like, but I'm still stepping out from this place of low self-worth. So where do we start to raise up a little bit of our worth through cleansing out some of those energetic patterns, those energetic emotions, say using Reiki and meditation and emotion code and whatever it is you're doing, right?
Yeah.
Working with a healer, therapy, all these things. And you get up this level, then maybe start taking one step to exploring stretching yourself a little. But if we try to stretch ourselves just to force ourselves to stretch, unless we feel so called and almost thrown into it, I don't think it serves us because we're
Mhm.
using, again, the external world to fix
Mhm.
ourselves in the world instead of going, how do I settle so deeply into my own joy and have so much room for myself so that I become available to myself, so that I don't compromise my truth, so that I just align with what is meant for me, align with what is true. And if as I get a little better and I choose something and it works for me now, I know that as I continue to align with my truth and what feels so good for me, that may or may not continue to work or grow with me, and then I can choose again, and I can choose again, and I can
Mhm.
choose again.
Mhm. Yeah, that is very interesting. And what you're sharing there too, I wondered if there's anything that is like a practical way for people watching and listening that they can learn to tune in to that guidance because what I'm hearing is like I love what you said about not forcing yourself to step into your comfort zone because I definitely used to do that.
Sure,
Definitely. I
right? Who
mean,
hasn't, right?
who hasn't? And then
Yeah.
but then you followed it up too with like, unless you're called to. And I was like, oh, that's interesting because I definitely remember times being called into it. So, how
Yeah.
would you say is best to listen to that? Which way that it's pulling you?
Okay.
You can be
Here's
more
the first
clear.
thing that I'll say. Yeah. The first thing I'll say is we have to stop thinking there are rules to this.
Mm,
And so that's the biggest thing I learned where people are like, I just actually funny had a friend he was Reiki 2 certified and he's like, I want to do more. And he's like, maybe we could work together and you could teach me sort of like some extra skills that I've picked up. And I'm like, 100%. Here's the thing you need to understand. There are no rules to this. There's a foundational learning, and this is in our lives, right? There's a foundational learning that we have. And then whether or not the universe throws us in, or we have to step in a little, will change all the time, right? I just want to say that first. So it's not just like I'm in my era where I'm just being thrown in. That might not be always be true, right?
Right.
I think there are different ways. I think it depends on how connected or willing you are to sort of unlock a little bit.
Mhm.
So when I say unlock, so for example, I don't know how many people take yoga or have ever taken yoga. So there's a pose in yoga called Tadasana, and it's mountain pose, and you stand tall, and your palms are usually open and they're down and facing, you're facing forward. What I do a lot of times in my yoga classes, I'll say, okay, we feel really tall and we're stretched, and everybody's like, fix their shirts and their hair after they stood up and they're still now. And I'm like, close your eyes. And when you close your eyes, and if you just unlock your knees a little bit and get out of the tension of trying to be tall, you'll notice the body wants to move a little and there's a looseness to it. And if you just let it go a little bit and you feel safe, we try so hard to control that. People like feel their bodies moving. They're like, nope, nope, I got to be still. So what
I
happens
was
is
going
you
through that right
notice,
now as you were talking. I'm like,
yeah, right. Yes, because you're letting go, you're in the moment, right? But what'll happen is you hear yourself, you'll get in your head, you'll get in your body, and you'll get out of your intuition and emotion. But what I try to tell them is just let yourself go. You will catch yourself. But if you just let yourself loosen a little bit, which means you're not tied to what your opinion about something, you're if you are like, what direction do you want to step in? And you let yourself go, you would probably lean in one way or the other. This is very similar to to like a sway test of yes or no,
Mhm.
which we can talk about another time. But um, then the reason I say this is because we have to be open first to going in any direction. So first thing I'd want you to ask you to do is to pause and ask yourself, am I truly open to making whatever choice feels like the most connected choice, the most joyful choice, without worrying about anything else,
Mhm.
right? It has to be that way. And sometimes if that feels overwhelming, you got to go back to the easy choice. So the first question is, what do I want to eat for lunch? Oh, I'm walking down the street and I could turn left or right. Do I want to go left or right and not worry about it, right? So you can start easy. But my whole point with that Tadasana, to go back to that, is if you unlock a little bit and you see one choice or you see another, it will likely, if you let it, evoke a reaction in you. It will
Mhm.
evoke something in you if you let yourself. We spend so much time controlling our natural flow of energy. I don't just want to say instinct because that can be reactive, but our natural response to something. And so, first, it's where can I get in a space where I allow my natural response to be?
Mhm.
So, is it in if you connect more to movement, maybe it is in a yoga class where like if you have an opportunity to like just move, what do you do? Do you let yourself go or you try to purposely go, well, I'm really tight in my hip flexor, so I'm gonna stretch that because I should. Well, what if that's not what you feel like today, right? Or your mind, well, I need to get this done, but oh, every time I put this on, I feel good. I feel possibility. Well,
Mhm.
then engage more with that. When I have a conversation with this friend, I feel like I explore more of myself. But when I'm talking to this up person B, I feel like I have to present myself a certain way. I feel like I'm trying to think of the things I should say.
Uh-huh.
Get
Those
in
are
a
really
space.
great examples.
Yeah, right. Get
Yeah.
in a space, but let yourself be loose. What's it like if you say to yourself, I have no one to please, even myself?
Mhm.
I
Oh my
have
gosh.
no one to please, right? And I don't even have to do the thing I'm choosing. That's the other thing. You have to break that tie. You don't actually have to do the thing. So, say one is like, I feel really, for some reason, I keep looking at this cruise, but I don't have the budget right now. That's not what we're asking. You don't have to book the cruise.
Mhm.
But if you feel called to that, then put yourself in the space of, I will go on the cruise if I'm able to.
Mhm.
So, after my father passed away in 2019, I had an opportunity to go to India for 2 weeks, and I did not have the
I
budget for it, right?
remember this. Yes.
Mhm.
Oh,
And
yes.
I had this feeling, and it was interesting. I had this feeling before my father was a very long, slow passing, and so I knew it was a very powerful journey. It was, you know, and I knew the trip had been coming up, and the trip was gonna be about 4 months after he passed away, and I was like, I have a feeling I'm going to be going on this trip. But immediately everything said no. And I started to lock up and overthink. And this was one of my first real opportunities to do the same thing. I don't have to say yes on paper, but I need to say yes to being open to going, which
Mhm.
means I need to say yes to miraculous financial opportunities because payments were due on certain dates. And I sure didn't have that. I had just moved back to New Jersey from New York City. My business was changing because all my clients there were still really wanting in person. And so I would have to
Mm.
do virtual, like things were different, new. I was teaching some new
Transitional.
classes, very
Yeah,
transitional. Thank you. Yeah. And I was like, okay, how about I just let myself unlock a little bit? And I'm super open to going. Like I'm super open. There's something about it. So I'm leaning into that evocative feeling. Whatever happens, I'm letting go of the outcome of this
absolutely,
and
yes.
what it means, and if it's the right choice or the responsible choice or the wrong choice. Because then I gave it an identity and I gave it a definition and description, and I got out of just whatever it was. And wouldn't you know, I don't even know. I had like a rush of business things. Something I was supposed to be taking care of was much cheaper. And then my I think it was someone gave me a late birthday gift and they're like, "I want to give you money this year. I don't know why." And I'm like, "Oh, I know why. It's because I'm supposed to go to India." And all of a sudden, everything came on the right time at the right trip. And I was like, okay, I guess I'm going. And it was great. And it was exactly what it needed to be. And they don't have to be that big. They don't have to be a trip to India, right? It could be choosing to take a class. It could be, I don't know, but I really need to go to this like this coffee shop. It just has the right environment and walk in. And if it's like, oh no, I misread that, walk back out,
Yeah,
or go in and be like, oh, this just feels good. I'm going to like sit here and be. The more you say yes to whatever just kind of doesn't have to be explained, but like you just want to lean towards, I think that is the best way to start.
yeah. And I'm hearing in there too that you're playful and practicing it. Like, just be playful with it and practice with it. Like the coffee shop, I think that I didn't even think about that, but that was
It's smaller, right?
such a great example. Like, trust the instinct to go, and then if you get there and it's not right, leave. Like,
Yeah.
it's yeah, teaching you
Well,
something
Lisa,
still.
you brought up the perfect word, right? Which was playful. And I forgot about that, because I sometimes forget to be playful, right? And so, we take life so seriously. And look, life can be serious. And also, if you take it seriously, all you're going to get is serious, right?
Serious,
So,
yeah.
like you said, if you have to be light about this, you're like, me picking a coffee shop is not life or death. But also, if we think about even deeper decisions about taking jobs, we are so stressed about making the right decision that all we're going to do is be in our head.
Mhm.
But is a decision always right or wrong or good or bad?
Mhm.
It's a decision. I don't remember who said it. I always associate it with Carolyn Mice, but I don't know that it's her. But she just says, like, the best thing we can do is learn to be good at making decisions instead of worrying about the specific decision and what we're going to do. This is not about having open heart surgery. This is
Yeah.
about, do I take a job? Like if you let yourself unlock and go, how do I feel about it?
Mhm.
You will choose the one that's best for you now, whether it's to learn a lesson or well, you'll learn a lesson regardless, right? But it's to learn that you were thinking too much in your head or that you trusted yourself and followed something that led you in a great direction. Like,
Yeah. It's all taking you somewhere, and it's just the act of making the decision is gonna lead to more momentum and more discovery and more, like, wherever you need to go rather than the non-action is stagnant and
right.
delayed and yeah.
And does everything have to move you forward world-wise? Nope.
Yeah. What may be moving you forward may not logically look like it's moving you forward.
Yeah. No, exactly. And I'm
One
sure
of the
you've had those
hardest lessons
experiences in your life, right?
to learn, yeah. Oh, still learning. Uh,
Right. I mean, all of this is still learning. None of this is like in the
yeah,
past, shut that down. I passed the whole test. Let's go. Yeah.
yeah. Yeah, and, um, since we're in a new year, and since it's now
Mm,
2025,
mhm.
I'm curious, like, what have you been connecting with, or what are you feeling, or what is it that you would want to leave the audience with today of like what this year, not like in a psychic way of what this year is going to bring, but just like what is the message that really needs to resonate with people right now as they really move forward in this year?
Oh my gosh, I'm like, wow, Lisa really hit me hard on that one. I'm like, there's 35,000 things, and we'll be here all afternoon.
But it's like, what's the one thing that like really is sticking out to you?
Okay. You know, it's so funny because I just asked and I was like, okay, there's four things, and I just connect. This is where I feel like I'm getting better about it. I'm like, what's the one, and let it be the one. Divine truth or bust. That's my hashtag for the year, but I feel like whatever is true for me, and I mean my joy, my purpose, my light, my love, my priorities, all in a big bag that you shake up. But it's like, just go forward there. You know, I think that so many look, I mean, look at what's happened in 2024. 2024 has been a crazy year. And so if all we do is get stuck in the mud of everything that's happening, we are walking into 2025 with another 100 pounds on our shoulders.
Hmm.
And so we want to bring love and peace and compassion into all of these spaces. But we also have to stay in our own truth because that is the best way to be our own light for ourselves and to be our own light in the world. And
Right.
so I guess that's what I mean. And, you know, don't think everything's already decided with where you need to go and that you have to have a plan and you have to, you know, reach a goal because we're in the new year. So everybody's like, well, I have to be really goal oriented and I have to set all of these new resolutions or I hate resolutions. I'm like, well, it doesn't have to be anything, it doesn't have to be one or the other, but I really think it's like, oh, just believe that your own joy and that your own truth is the most worthy purpose you have because it
Hmm.
teaches everybody else that their own divine joy and love and truth is just as important, which then makes everybody worthy. And if we had a world of people who all felt worthy and filled with their own joy and truth and love, then reflecting it out on other people is just like, I mean, it's just easy
Just
because we're all just shining.
just
Yeah.
radiating. Yeah.
Yep.
So I
Yeah.
hear divine truth or bust. I love it.
Yeah, that's my hat. I'm not a hashtag person because I'm not really on social media a ton, but I'm like divine truth or bust because I'm like an all-in person too. So I'm like, well, let's just do it. And so even when I do my own energy treatments on myself, I'm like, okay, what's in the way of my divine truth? You know, which for me in a transitional space in my life is like, what is moving me forward? And I don't mean forward, but what is allowing me to evolve to be the happiest, most joyful, most loving and loved, like where I just feel so connected to myself that I make sense to myself, that
Hmm.
I'm not questioning myself or I'm in the way. And so that is my divine truth, which is my higher self, which sees me in a different way than human self sees me.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Now I'm like getting all woo, woo,
No, I
but you know
love
what I
it.
mean?
I'm like,
You know what I
yeah,
mean?
we
Yeah.
could keep going forever on that.
Right. I know. Listen, that's my whole thing though. Like, I want to empower myself and everyone else that like that's the deal. That's the deal, right?
Yeah.
And sure, I choose to do it through energy work and move, you know, an intuitive movement, but like other people do it other ways and it's like whatever way is yours.
Hmm. And really tapping into that this year of like really tapping into what lights you up, what is going to bring more of this like divine truth
Mhm.
out, like you were saying.
Mhm.
And I love in there
Mhm.
too about the goals and everything. This is the first year I have not
Mhm.
done goals and have not done, you know, everybody
Yeah,
does vision boards. I do a different version. It's like a vision
sure.
egg, and the
Mhm.
egg is like hatching, and birthing like everything is
Cool.
reality, which has really worked for me. But this
Mm.
year, it's funny you say that. It was like, I don't feel called to do that. I don't feel called to sit down with
Yeah.
that yet.
Hmm. Hmm.
Yet. And that's okay. It doesn't have to
That's
be you join the gym January 1st.
well, who says January 1st, right? I mean, like, is that how your year turns? What I do think is I do understand why people choose things in the new year. It's a chance to let go of things and not drag them in, not blame yourself, and another opportunity to criticize yourself for what you didn't do last year. So I appreciate also why people do that, but I feel the same way you do, or like it doesn't have to be that way. It's inspired action, right? Isn't that what the secret says? Inspired action. So you have to feel inspired.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. Inspired in spirit is
that's
more.
beautiful. Yeah, I love
Yeah.
that.
I don't know where that
So
was
can
from.
I don't either. I don't know. It's one of the many brilliant things that are out there.
Yeah.
So can I ask you to do something for me? Do you
Sure.
mind? Just a
What is
couple
it?
minutes just to do a little something. So this
Yeah.
is something I do in my Sparking Joy workshop, and I think it's actually a great exercise for everybody. It only take up like a minute or two.
Okay.
And I did not create this. I definitely saw other people in the world doing this, and I thought it was a brilliant way to connect yourself. So Lisa, I would like you to introduce yourself. And the things that I would like you to make sure you do not include are any job you have and anything about your family. And I'd like you to tell me about you. Now, no roles about family, no roles about work, even this kind of stuff, but tell me about you.
Well, I'm Lisa, and I am a soul experiencing this human life in some way, shape, or form. And I really feel my joy comes from lighting other people up, sharing my journey with other people, and just being so present and so listening to whomever I'm with. And that is who I am, a divine being of light, a divine soul, a divine um, existence, consciousness here on earth.
Cool. I love that. Can you also describe a little bit about like what things you like? Um, Like, even more specifics, like what you would do in the world, like what things bring you joy, what things excite you, what characteristics, that you have as a human being that others can relate to.
Oh, I really like having conversations like this
Cool.
and diving deep.
Yeah.
I really love diving deep into what makes people the way they are, what
Mhm.
brought them to where they are,
Mhm.
how everything molded them, and connecting on that. Finding the
Mhm.
similarities, finding the synchronicities would be another word.
Mhm. Mhm.
And I love events. I have a deep passion for events, whether attending
Cool.
them or holding them on my own. It's something
Mhm.
that brings me great joy, lights me up, and there's nothing like stepping
Mhm.
into an event and stepping out of your reality that you've been living
Mhm.
to
Mhm.
completely shift your perception on what life is about and where you're at.
Totally. I
So,
love that. Great job. And that's one of the things that you did that so beautifully, right? You did that
oh,
so beautifully. Um,
I had no practice, by the way. I didn't know I was going to get asked this.
Yeah, no, 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 no. You know why? I have a lot of people in my workshop, my Sparking Joy workshops, who do that, who get really stressed out, you know, because the first thing they'll say is, well, I'm a mother, I'm a father, I'm a sister, I'm a wife. I do this in the world. And, you kind of went to the thing that's the most important to you. You led with like, your spiritual journey and how important that is to you. And then when I asked you to go a little bit deeper, you're like, well, here are actually the things I like to do. I like to go to events. I like to connect. I like to have deep conversations. And that's really what it is, because that allows me to get to know you a lot better than like your family is very important. It's a huge, it's one of the largest parts of your journey. And that's so powerful. And also that doesn't tell me about you. And so I encourage everybody, to kind of maybe write down a few things like, who am I? Who am I that I want to share? Like if I introduced myself, I'd be like, hey, I'm Victoria. Um, I'm a curious, dry-witted cat lover. who loves, like Lisa, super deep conversations. I make a long story long all the time. I love mint chocolate chip ice cream. I am, a person who loves Argentine tango and dancing and expressing themselves.
Oh, yeah,
Singing
that's
is the thing
beautiful.
that makes me feel the most myself in the world, where everything lines up. Um, and I hate being cold. Right. So my reason for doing that is I didn't tell you anything about my romantic relationships or my marital status. I didn't tell you my job. Um, and this has been me practicing through doing these workshops with other people, right?
Yeah, yeah.
But what that did was, do you feel like you got to know a little something about me by me telling you those things?
Absolutely, especially the mint chocolate chip ice cream. I'm like, I feel like that lodged in my memory and I'll never forget that.
It's
The next
also
time I
like a
see
little
you.
personal silly thing, right? It didn't have to all be not serious, but have more weight to it. And I
Yeah,
think when we get more comfortable doing that, I do think it's another aspect of being connected to just ourselves and being just ourselves in the world without having it look like a resume list of things we've done.
for sure. Yeah, I really, really feel that. And even
Hmm.
just to add to that, by you even asking me those questions, it's like I felt like such a surge of energy within me too, of like not the nervousness. I was a little nervous of like, what's she gonna ask me? But then
Totally.
past that, I was like, oh, it just made me feel alive to like remember that more and
Hmm.
connect with that more. And if I can grab my dog, then I love
Oh, please, I
Pomeranians.
saw the
Yeah.
upstairs. Yeah, I saw his little fluffy head like rocking.
Yeah, he's
I'm
part of the
For all of you
podcast now.
listening, yeah, I'm like an animal person, like crazy. Actually, my first Reiki client ever was a bunny. So before I even treated people, I
Oh my gosh,
treated
that's
animals.
amazing.
His name was Bilbo Baggins.
Oh my gosh, that's
He was
adorable.
so cute. He was older and he just would like hop around all day long. It was
Oh,
super cute.
Bilbo
Yeah,
Baggins.
but that's great. Like you saying you love Pomeranians, first of all, when we talk about things that we connect to and that bring us joy, our energy changes so people can feel that openness, and it's a powerful vulnerability because it comes from joy. And even you just talking like, oh wait, I wanted to include that too because I love that too, and then it's like it builds on itself, right? Like appreciation appreciates,
Uh-huh.
right? So you're like, oh my god, and I love Pomeranians, and probably now you're thinking, oh my gosh, and I love the color blue. And like, my favorite coffee drink is like a caramel macchiato. It doesn't matter, but it's like it lets us
It
feel and
starts
sense if there is a
the
whimsical
momentum.
space, and then we start to connect if this person is creative and just allows themselves to feel like both the serious and less serious, or weighty and less weighty things about themselves are all just part of this beautiful mix of who each of us
Mhm.
are.
Yeah, I think that's a super powerful practice. I'm so glad you brought that up because I I know for so many of us the conditioning aspect is I am my work, I am my marital status, I am my kids, I am my, all those things. That's like what we start with. And it brought to mind there was an event I went to several years ago in California where you could not introduce yourself of what you do. We didn't go into everything you just had us do, which just really adds to it. But it was like you had to say something about yourself and not your work. You weren't allowed to talk about who you are as your career there, which was
Mhm.
very awkward at that time.
It's super the first time I asked myself to do it, I was like, because I felt like my worth was attached to what I could give
Yeah.
or what I was doing.
Hmm.
And it's like, nope. And I have a lot of people's, I had someone, it's really interesting. I had a couple of friends who I don't remember where they're from, but they don't live in the United States. And they said it's so strange. A lot of people in the United States have these conversations, and how they introduce themselves is, or how they connect. What do you do? It's the first question they ask. Oh, are you married? Do you have children? And they're like, it's so strange because we don't really get to know anything about the person. We just ask what they've accomplished.
Right. It's very surface level, but also very like it feels more like ego. The ego's asking
It's
the
ego
question,
driven.
right?
Yeah. And it's unconscious. It's an unconscious ask.
Uh-huh.
Like you get way more conscious when you start, if you ask someone who they are without those things, You actually really have to lean in and listen. You don't go as unconscious, and then the person speaking gets way more present because they're like, oh, I have to think about myself
Uh-huh.
and what lights me up, what I enjoy or what I don't like, right? I
Right,
don't like
right.
bell peppers, like there. So if you really like are on team bell pepper, maybe we're not going to be as close as we wanted to be. I don't know. Maybe you'll have to leave them out when I come over for dinner. I don't know.
Yeah, no, it's very interesting, and it does stimulate the brain differently. Like, I really feel like now that I know that about you with ice cream in particular, you know, I will never
You're
forget
like
that.
mint chocolate chip.
It's right there.
Yeah,
So that's really
because it
beautiful.
takes it out of that, right? It takes it out. There's all levels of our humanity, ourselves,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah,
And who
levels
knows
that
what
we're
level we connect with someone else on. It could you and I are
right.
connecting on a lot of levels, but it's on a very deep spiritual, energetic place. But maybe for someone else in the room or in the group, they're like, "Oh, I love mint chocolate chip too." And that's the connector. But it's a
Yeah.
human to human connector, a person to person connector.
Yeah, or they're gonna watch this and then they're gonna go get some mint chocolate chip ice cream.
I mean, listen, now
And
I'm
we
gonna have
influence
to go
that.
to the grocery store right now because I'm like, "Oh, I haven't had it in a really long time."
Yeah,
Well, I'm
that's
so
so
proud of
funny.
us.
Yeah, for sure. The important things. We covered all the important things here today.
And ended
Um,
with ice cream.
well, I love it. I love it. And it's Divine Truth or Bust and mint chocolate chip ice cream. And if people do want to connect with you, Victoria, what's the best way to find you?
Yeah. Best way to find me, we've got a couple ways, right? My website, alignwithvictoria.com. I kept it super easy. It's exactly how it says. You can also email me at hello@alignwithvictoria.com. I am technically on social media, Instagram and Facebook, but I've really needed to stay separate because I was doom scrolling no matter my intentions. And I
Mhm.
was getting out of my own truth when I was posting. And so I haven't really been on social media much. So it's not the best way to contact me. So definitely the email or the website. I will get back to you right away. I would love to just, find out what ways I can serve people and help them really empower other people's truth, their joy, and just get them set and to kind of meet themselves again. Yeah. But
Yeah.
thank you so much for kind of having a great conversation, creating this wonderful space where people get to be in their truth in such a dimensional way. And you're so easy to talk to. So thank you so much.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that and receive that. And I appreciate you being here today.
You're
Yeah, it's been a lot of fun talking, and I'm sure we'll do this again. I foresee in the future.
Would love it. Anytime.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you so much.